So, real quick question, guys. Do you trust the media? That's a question that Gallup has been asking Americans over the last 2 decades or so. And this might come as a surprise to you, but trust in the media is at an all-time low, tied only with 2016. Only 34% of Americans say that they trust the media. And that is down from the all-time high of 50 was 55% in the year 2000. So essentially, ever since I was put on this planet, the American people have trusted the media less and less and less. I want to talk about why that is, whether or not that's a good thing, because I think that, and if you don't think it's a good thing or do think it's a good thing, why that is, because there's so many different ways to tackle this. There's the partisan split with significantly less Republicans trusting the media. Only 11% of Republicans answered yes to that question, as opposed to 58% of Democrats, there's a lot of splits between, Republicans and Democrats. And I think that one is really, really interesting. So let's just start out with this. Rory, we'll throw to you first. Do you trust the media?
So, I mean, if you're just gonna ask me generally, I don't trust most media outlets. I don't watch CNN. I'd rather trust more independent outlets to get my news. But that being said, I acknowledge the fact that it is absolutely terrifying that the American people don't trust their media, because the media should be the main mechanism that we use to engineer our society, to pass on messaging so that everybody's on the same page. And we can see, like, a lot of fascist and authoritarian regimes, one of the main things they do is they erode trust in the media, because if you can't trust your news outlet, if you can't trust where you're getting your information from the world, then they can spin any kind of story they want. And that's kind of what you're seeing right now, is like, and as you said, it was at 55% in 2000, and now it's down to 34%. I mean, in that exact same statistic, you have a record high distrust, active distrust in the media is 39%. And if you look at, like, the creation of Fox News and more extreme right media outlets like that, I believe that it kind of correlates to that. The fact that not only do you have this giant consolidation in the market of the media outlets, you have certain media outlets actively pushing people to distrust the media, and almost in the same way that those same fascist regimes did many years ago. So I think it's not only terrifying, like I said, I think that we need to do better with our media, and we need to hold it more accountable, and we need to break them up, because right now one of the largest issues is the monopolization of American media.
How about you, TJ? You trust the media?
Well, see, I think that it's kind of a flawed question. Something that I always I
Rory,
complain
what did
about
I say to
every.
you? Rory, I said to you, TJ always takes my talking points like every single time. He does exactly what I was about to chime in with. But anyway, continue my thought for me.
Well, let's see if I go down the same path as you're going down. But so I think it's kind of a flawed question, because the idea of the media, I don't think you can like say the media is any one thing. And it's every election cycle, I get annoyed by a lot of things. But on the top 5 things I get annoyed by is a poll question that's asked. You guys are going to know it when I say it. And they say, well, according to this Gallup poll, 71% of Americans think the country is on the wrong track. Now, that doesn't mean a goddamn thing. Like, they say it all the time, like it means something, but like, I can say the country's on the wrong track for one reason, and a conservative Republican could say it's on the wrong track for a completely different reason. So it doesn't really tell you anything. But the media itself is it's I think that if we're talking about mainstream, we're going to like narrow it down to, the big networks, ABC, CBS, and all that, and CNN and stuff like that. I think that's one of the main reasons that trust has dropped, is because of the Iraq War. Because I mean, during the drop to the Iraq War, every reputable news organization was out there saying, yes, Iraq does have weapons of mass destruction. This war is justified. And they were colluding with, Bush and Cheney, and just repeating their talking points over and over again fast forward 15 years later, and I was like, oh, wow, the New York Times was lying about the weapons of mass destruction, and so was everybody else. So, like, I think that there's actual, like, legitimacy to people saying that they don't trust the media. And one thing you mentioned, John, is that Republicans trust the media less. And, Republicans always talk about the liberal media, and we kind of roll our eyes at that. But it's true. The media is liberal. And it's Noam Chomsky brought this up. I remember him saying that the media is liberal kind of necessarily, because the media has to be liberal to show you like what the furthest bounds of leftism that you can go. And they say, okay, the Overton window's right here, and the media is going to stop right here at neoliberalism. Going any further than that is out of the question. So in that sense, the media is liberal. But the Fox News folks, they call everything liberal, but in that sense, they're true. But that's why I think that there's not a lot of trust in the media, because one, there's so many media outlets that the media doesn't mean anything, but they have legitimate gripes to say the media does lie all the time.
Yeah, TJ, you just stole all of the talking points. We might as well end it
God
now.
damn it.
No, because I was legitimately going to say that it's a loaded question because the media is nebulously defined. Like 11% of Republicans say they trust the media, but I know for certain that more than 11% of Republicans trust Fox News. Yes. That's just clear. And so they just don't consider that to be part of the media that they're referring to. I have media that I do trust. I personally do relatively trust the capital M media, your CNN, your New York Times, even your Fox reports. Like, I do think they are generally trustworthy, at least compared to untrustworthy sources. Now, does that mean that you should always trust whatever they say and just assume that they're correct? No, you should always do your own research and critically think and look at the sources of information they're coming from. And we should teach that in schools, because I think that would increase trust in the media. I think that if you were able to look at the average American was able to look at the media with the critical eye that I know how to, they'd be able to trust it more, because they'd be able to know when something smells fishy and when it doesn't. But we don't have that in this country. We don't teach media literacy in school. Most Americans have never even thought about, checking sources of the media themselves personally. And so, of course, they're going to distrust them. Like when you said, TJ, they are caught lying. And the thing that we can glean from this poll isn't necessarily, do Americans trust the media, but when don't they trust the media? Because if you look at the two massive dips, or three massive dips. There's three massive dips on this graph. We'll throw it up now. The first one was exactly what you said. Happened right 2003, 2004. Iraq war. We lied about it, and massive, from 50, looks like 54% down to 44%. So a 10% drop just in that year alone. And then the next year that we have a big, massive drop, 2016. With all of the election misinformation being talked about, with most of the liberal media basically saying Trump has no chance of winning, and then he did. And that also has something to do with, well, first of all, NBC said 99% chance Hillary Clinton win. And that might be the moment that broke me in terms of having any trust, because that's just dumb.
Yeah.
I think that most Americans didn't understand that a 30% chance does happen a third of the time and they just didn't understand that. But when MSNBC is going around saying, 1% chance Donald Trump wins, that was just ridiculous and absurd, and no one was checking that math. And then the next big jump, 2020 up until now, with all of the misinformation and skepticism surrounding COVID, and now we're talking about Israel and Palestine with media misinformation. But looking at where those jumps are, I think is pretty important, because you learn when the lies are being caught. And I think that's really interesting. Now, the one I haven't been able to understand, and I don't know if you guys have any speculative ideas about this, but after 2016, there was a massive spike up. Really, the only time it's gone significantly up was from 2016 to 2018. It went from 32% to 45%. And I have no idea what happened during those 2 years that would have caused that. Very rarely do I come in this thing. I have no idea what happened, but speculation time, guys.
I think part of it is, and you're probably seeing that a lot of that is also relative to the news cycles, to the presidential cycles. The presidential races tend to have a lot of influence on that too, because if a certain news outlet is pushing a certain candidate, like if they're pushing Hillary Clinton, saying, "Oh, she has this astronomical chances," that's going to piss people off, and that's going to cause them to say, "I don't trust the media. They're saying things that I disagree with," because a lot of people are just that petty. And I kind of want to flesh out my original point. Whenever I was saying I don't trust CNN, my brain just automatically goes to like punditry on TV. I don't watch like the CNN news channel, but I mean, I do go and get my information from like CNN journalist articles and like Axios articles, and occasionally there's like the local Fox channels that will actually produce some real journalistic stuff, and it just goes to your point, TJ, that it's just so broad and nebulous that there's like these different levels of what makes up the news, that it's just impossible to say what the quote unquote media really is.
Yeah, that's a really good point with the line of demarcation between the punditry and the hard news, because what most people see is the punditry. Like that's the fun stuff. That's when people are pontificating and cracking wise and just giving their opinions. That's a lot more fun to watch, because yeah, like you said, or like even Fox News, if you read like their hard news stuff, it's not terrible. Like it's not like it's actual stuff that's sourced, but that's not what people usually think about. And John, to your point, 1,000,000% agree with what you said, that people don't bother checking the sources of what people are saying, because what you're saying could be true, but you're just presenting it from a certain point of view. An example that I think of is a friend of mine who, she was like this wild conspiracy theorist in every possible way. But I remember her sending me this article, and the title of the article was "We now have proof that Iran facilitated records to get the 9/11 hijackers into the United States." And she goes, "Look at that. Iran had a part in this." And so I read the article, and the article said that they went to Iran, they registered for a passport, and they flew, out of Iran. I was like, okay, if that's the case, we facilitated it too, because we gave them visas.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make any, but once again, people just read the headlines. The headline was true, but the way that they phrased it makes people think a certain way and go down a certain path. And it's really annoying, because we know this, we do social media and stuff like that, that you have to, if you want people to actually pay attention to you, you have to lead with these salacious and censorious headlines or whatever. And unfortunately, people don't pay attention to the actual context. They pay attention to the headline, like, "Oh, Iran facilitated the 9/11 attacks," and they're automatically going to think that the Iranians actually helped attack on 9/11. So yeah, I don't know how to fix that. I don't, because when at the end of the day, it's about eyeballs and it's about clicks, and putting boring headlines that are to the letter accurate and not misleading in any way. No one's gonna read that shit, and it's unfortunate, but it's true.
And that's definitely part of it, is just the media. The main focus of the media, because it's so privatized, monopolized, it's about sensationalism. It's about the most eyeballs, which means the most people viewing ads, which means the most money going to those companies. And that's kind of the big disconnect that we've seen, especially going back to like the 70s, whenever they dismantled all the FCC regulations that took away the neutrality doctrine and things like that took away the government's ability to say, "Hey, you can't say this on TV. That's factually incorrect." Like that's just completely stripped away now, to where news outlets can just run with whatever they want and mislead people however they want. There's no repercussions for it.
But the problem with the media specifically is that while private media has its issues that we are all very aware of, with especially when it comes to monopolization and profit-driven news sourcing, I also don't want the government getting too involved in what the media can and cannot say. It's an incredibly difficult catch-22, which we're kind of seeing play out with social media too, because there is a huge benefit. Like, I think what's going on in Israel and Palestine is a huge example of like the images from Palestine get out. They've gotten out. People have interest in it and they're getting spread on social media. And that is a positive thing towards getting the general American public to understand the truth of the situation. But also with that, the other side of that coin is that people can just make shit up. And there's no centralized ability to stop that. And so you end up having a ton of misinformation online too. Now, I think that the answer to the question is education, as I said before. I think that the only way you can't fix it from the top down, because there's flaws in every system. There's no systematic way to make people trust media or information. You have to teach people how to read information in order for them to trust it. To me, that is the answer to the question of how do we get people to trust the media again. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree with that, but I think that's the end-all be-all solution at the end of the day, at least as best as we can do.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a little column A, column B. Just like, of course, educating the masses so they're able to actually analyze information, because there's a lot of dense information given through the media. And at the same time, we need to have more decentralization. Like there's just too much consolidation in the media markets to where they're basically like colluding with one another, and it should be a blatant violation of antitrust laws. But we're living in modern America, so why would we care about antitrust laws?
Yeah, we left that a long time ago. What's funny though is in the past, before the cable news era, when you could only get news from like the three major networks, everyone did have a lot of trust in the media. I mean, everyone was watching the exact same news, and no one, I mean, you may have questioned it here or there, but that the trust in the media was a lot higher. And then when people started, disaggregating media and having Fox News is the big one. Well, actually, I would say Rush Limbaugh was actually the big person who did this, because he made liberal a dirty word, and he popularized liberal media and stuff, and saying that conservatism is eschewed by the people at the top. So we need to create our own little media structure and our own little media bubble. And it's just, propaganda all the way through. So that's why, like John, you mentioned, why conservatives trust the media less, because, like they say, reality has a left-wing bias. And so whenever they watch, actual news, it's going to come from at least a moderately left view, and they're not going to accept it. It's just how it is.
I'll end this segment by saying that the surprising stat that I learned from researching this topic was that one of the most trusted sources of information is podcasts, with 87% of Americans responding that they trusted the information they heard on podcasts. So, yeah, exactly. So if you're listening to our podcast right now, it's very important for you to know that subscribing to our channel will make you 50% more likely to get laid. That's just important for you all to know. Trust it. Don't look it up.
Straight facts.
Cool.
Good. It is very funny, because you ever watch those like man on the street interviews, and they ask people, hey, where do you get your news? And people don't want to say that they watch Fox or CNN or MSNBC. Like, they never say that. They always say, I get it from independent media. And it's funny, because say what you want about like Fox and CNN and whatever, MSNBC, there's at least an editor there. There's at least someone who's checking what's written, making sure it's accurate. But, just some podcasters, they can say whatever they want. Like, it doesn't, I guess there's more of like a personal connection with them, and they have less of an incentive to just make bullshit up for tons of money. I guess people think of it that way, but I mean, why would you think a podcaster is more honest than anyone who works for a big company? They're equally likely to lie to you. It is true, but it's very funny to me.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.